you know what? Actually, going to that, I did watch this video of this, and this does actually relate to part of this identity stuff. It's about a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
And he basically was talking about, his name is Goobie Doobie, I think that's what his name is. Goobie and Doobie. That's his channel name, I'm pretty sure.
Gooby, Doobie. Okay.
Yeah, his dog's name is, I think.
Oh, it's the pup's name, is it?
Yeah, as well.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
I think his name was Gooby or something.
Okay.
I can't remember. But like, so that's what he meant. But I'm pretty sure he just nicknamed it. It's catchy. But he's basically talking about like the stories behind like surgery. Like the stuff that you don't really hear of a lot of. Like, and he quit.
Is this the guy that's quit and now lives in like
in the
mountains and stuff?
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
he's completely detached from himself from like the world, and he's just experiences, and now he just wants to live like in the wild. Well,
Yes.
not as a wild person like that, but
Yeah.
he's more nature driven now and stuff.
Yeah, not primal, but
Right.
living as a human, but
He's on a monkey easy.
but exactly, you watched
Right.
that video then, I presume. Or,
Well, I haven't watched the whole video. I just know the concept. Like I know the guy. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Interesting. Asian guy, right?
yeah, that's right.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
he was like a surgeon, and basically he's just talking about why he quit, and it was like a 50-minute long video.
Okay.
Well, it's quite long, but actually, like this insights that he gave was quite interesting, and the reason why he quit was because he just felt like it didn't align with his values. What his mission and his values was with the way he was doing things didn't really align, because he felt like he had a dilemma, which was like he knows that like surgery that he was operating on people isn't going to exactly solve the problem, because the way he explained it was like, I mean, I'm paraphrasing him, and I'm probably it's not probably like you should watch how he explains it, but
We'll
it's
put
like,
the link in the description.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And like the way I'm gonna simplify it, but basically it's just like it's like broken ceiling, right?
Yep.
A ceiling that's broken has like water damage or something that you can see.
Yep.
And the way he describes surgery is like just like, plastering, like basically covering that up, plastering it out, or probably removing something and then removing something that's like broken, or like just covering it up, plastering it, right? Putting short-term solution, but
Yep.
but that still doesn't address the root cause of why that happened.
Right. Okay.
And at the same time, it can still happen again. Like that problem can still happen. Because with surgery, right, what you're doing is either two things. The way he described it was either you're removing something, like you're removing a bone or something like that, which is like touching this nerve and creating pain there, or you're either just adding electrons. I think it's like electrodes. What am I saying? Electrodes, which creates like this sort of gap in between nerves. So you don't get that nerve pinch pain. So that's what you're doing. But that still doesn't address the root cause of the issue. And even if people have like poor habits, that can still cause that problem again. So it's honestly just like almost like a bandage. And he's not trying to say like, surgery is like pointless and it's bad, doesn't do anything. He's just saying like it didn't align with his like values, because he felt like it was more he was doing surgery to raise money for companies to make customers keep coming, and he didn't like that idea. He wanted to do it in such a way that it will solve their problem, but that's not how these companies, how they're going to make money and stuff. That's what it's really driven by. And so he had that misalignment. And I think before that, he also had this idea of like, I think, which was like prosthetics and it being connected with the brain and stuff like that, like having like prosthetic that can be connected through neurons. But he said something about like neurons and electrodes cannot communicate, and that can cause issues. So that was his dream, and he realized that he can't achieve it. It's not possible currently, and he gave up. And I think that was like his first, you could say, crack in the wall. And then afterwards, he like what he first thought of like as a surgeon, which was amazing and all that, he came to realize it's great and all that, but the pay is amazing, but it's just not aligned with how he feels guilty each time he's operating on someone, because he knows that it's not going to completely solve the problem, and that they're actually better off, right? Which he gave was like the people that recovered really quickly, that didn't even need surgery, did the essential basic things, which was having a low salt diet, having a moderate amount of meat consumption, not too much, because that creates other problems, lots of vegetables and fruits, exercising daily, like 30 minutes, whether it's walking, hiking, whatever, going out in air, breathing And social, so having like a healthy social circle, friends and families close, doesn't have to be big, just small amounts of people that you can trust in your life. And another thing was obviously sleep. And that was really it. He said those people that just did those things are also stress management. Stress is a very big thing as well. If you just do those essential things, like you survive. Like those people that did those things didn't even need surgery, who did all of these types of things and activities. And he said, like the people that didn't do those didn't recover really well, or either got worse after the surgery. So even after the surgery, they got worse because of their habits, or they just had the same problem again. So they kept coming back in again. So that's what he was talking more about. And I think what must have been very hard for him, based on how he's talking, would have been like, detaching himself from being viewed as like a surgeon. Like I think that's the hardest part, like letting that go. Like other than the money, like obviously surgeons get paid a lot, right? Top few percent in the world get paid. But, you attach your identity to that, and you attach your identity towards like saving people when you don't necessarily, what your perspective of saving wasn't really exactly that. And I think that must have been very hard for him to be able to accept something new. And after he quit, he had no idea what he was going to do. People asked him, what is your next plan? He said, no idea, no clue. But the thing is that I see within himself is that he has a mission, right? He wants to be able to help people. And it doesn't have to be through surgery. It can be if you tie yourself to your mission, which is like for him, saving people. It doesn't matter how you do it. You can save people by, even speaking, which people do. Like you have speakers, motivational speakers, psychologists. And I think the way he's doing his YouTube channel, he's getting that attention from the right people. And I think now he's getting those connections to be able to deliver his mission in such a way that aligns with his values.
Good example of the Carl Jung quote, finding your true self. It's heroic in a way of what he's done, and it's great. Do you think there was a better way for him to approach it though? Knowing that there are these gaps, knowing that he's actually not treating the problem, do you think he could have done something more about it rather than just quitting?
I think from what he said, like he's done it for a while. Right. And I think he said that he even said himself, if I kept this up, I wouldn't have lived until after 20 years. Because the amount of stress and difficulty they have to deal with, like they don't get enough sleep. That's one thing he said. Like I don't get time for anything, and I barely get sleep because I got emergency calls. They have to do emergency surgeries.
He's a neurosurgeon, right?
Yeah, pretty sure he's a neurosurgeon. Yeah, so there's that too. And he said like if I keep this up, and plus you have the feeling of stress, and also not just the stress of someone's life in your hands, but also your internal stress of realizing that you're not necessarily solving the problem.
Yeah,
you're just sort of delaying it in a sense. So having that guilt and operating on that is also taxing.
Yeah.
And he said if he keeps this up, he's not going to live long.
So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But like, if you know there's a problem, you're not solving the problem. Why not address? Why not? I mean, you're going against big pharma, and you're going against people that have a vested interest, whatever it is. If it's guilt that's tripping you in these surgeries, right? That I'm not really solving the problem, I'm just delaying the problem. I'm not a neurosurgeon, I'm not going to say whatever it is, but do you think, looking at it from a different lens though, could he have addressed that problem in a different way rather than quitting? Maybe, and he's sort of challenging people, going, okay, well, we're not solving the problem here. Why don't we focus on the problem? Nothing against him. I think like what he's doing is great. I'm just looking at it from a different perspective of, if you've quit and you want to talk about it, do you think like that doesn't really solve the actual problem? Because surgeries are still going to go ahead. People are still going to go under the knife, whether it's you or another surgeon.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
I think I'm maybe like, I haven't watched the video, so I could be misinterpreting, and I'm just going based on what you're saying. And I'm saying you've said anything wrong. I'm just saying that from a different lens, like, of course, what he's trying to do is great. And it's like, you need more voices that people say it out loud. But if there's an actual problem that can be solved and your mission statement is to solve that problem, you will do everything you can to solve that problem. Right? Like, that's just my perspective, though.
I get what you're completely saying, and I think that's what his intention is.
Yeah.
And I feel like the opportunities that are probably coming his way based on his latest video, which he got, I think, connected with some company.
Yeah.
I think that's the route he's going through.
Okay, fair.
He's on that discovery, and I think it's nice to see that because he's going with something that is more truly aligned with himself.
Yeah.
Rather than what society or what other people view himself as. Because when they heard him do that, like, they thought there's like something wrong with him.
Well, it's courageous. You go from you're a neurosurgeon being paid a lot of money, respectable job, to drop all that ego and have humility to go, you know what, this doesn't align to what I actually want to do for humanity. It's great. Like, it says a lot about who he is as a person.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's good that you brought up that question, and I think that's something that he will probably discover more of through his journey.
Hopefully he does.
Yeah.
Hopefully he does. And I'm sure he will.
Definitely. So that's a great example of literally like the point of like what we're talking about, like detachment from titles and the extrinsic, because that's what people see and that's what people measure you by. But what happens, and I think the biggest question to really ask yourself a lot of the time is like, what will happen if I lose those things? Who would I be? Am I not that person anymore because I lost that? And that's something important to consider. But yeah, I think also with Carl Jung, right? Coming back to the self, right? Because there was like two other ones. So we had the persona, then we had the shadow. And this one is pretty interesting. It's called the Anima/Animus. Yeah, it sounds like animals, but it's not exactly animals.
Say it again.
Anima/Animus.
Animus/Animus.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain.
So the inner feminine side in a man is called anima.
Right.
And then the masculine side in a woman is called animus.
All right, I'm keen to hear this.
Yeah. So the best way to like really understand it is like a man integrating the anima is more of like having more empathy. Like moments where you're going to be soft. Like when you're with a child, when you're with a baby, you're not going to be like this ruthless, like sort of aggressive, assertive, dominant type of man.
Like
right?
not a Genghis Khan.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't. Because that's going to instill a trauma in the child. So it's like you're going to be more like self-composed, calm, collected, and more of just empathetic. Even with like people that you come across solving problems, like business problems, even in that context. With the customer, you're not going to be some assertive, aggressive, angry person because then that's how the customer is going to view you as, and then it's negative word of mouth. You're going to be more of like an empathetic person. You're going to try to understand what the customer's problem is and then try to solve it from that angle. So that's like how you can, in a way, integrate the anima. Even with yourself, like it sounds a bit strange and cringe and all that, but like, when you're going through difficult, conflicting situations, like having that nurturing side to just go through, like reflecting, when you're reflecting through things, like having that self-forgiveness, especially when you've messed up, you stuffed up. Like obviously take accountability that, you've done something wrong, but instead of being a victim of your behaviors and the circumstance, you let it define like the future as well, because this is how you see yourself. You forgive yourself for that reason and you give yourself the permission to do that. Because a lot of the time we seek forgiveness from others. And as you said, like, I think as you said before, like you don't know how much that person likes you or whatever. At the same time, you don't even know if that person even forgave you. And how you don't even feel content or fulfilled by that anyways. It's just like you have to also give yourself permission a lot of the time when you mess up and do things to forgive yourself along the way and learn from that. So that's like, I would say, the anima side of him, like the anima side of a man. So it's like 80% of the time you'll be like masculine, but there's like that 20% you have left to live for like empathy, to live like there's moments where you have to listen. Like you can't just always be like the person that just speaks and just be attentive, always shouting and screaming ideas. You have to also be very attentive and actively listen. So there's that. And it's like for the woman, it's like the Animus, which is like the masculine side. So there's moments where women will have to be like dominant in this context of like professional work life. When they're in like a higher position, they have to be more dominant in that sense. Even as a mother, probably they have to be strict when the child grows up. They have to place some boundaries. Yeah, otherwise, then you give too much freedom, then they end up becoming like rebellious, and then they go through other problems. So there's like that side as well. Or when when you have to take actions by yourself in that sense. So that's like the animus side. So then there's like the self, which is the last part. And the self is basically unifying all of the things that we just spoke about. And it's both the unconscious and conscious side, and embracing like the persona, the shadow, the anima/animus. That, and in that, by integrating those things, you can live in harmony and like more in a peaceful, contentful, which is more true to yourself. Because it aligns with your deepest values and your potential.
Okay.
So that's like, I don't know how we talked about true self. It's hard to define, but there's those different sides of you. If you integrate those and unify them by addressing, like going through deeper introspection and realizing how can I integrate these things, that's when you can really live your true self in that sense. So that's how Carl Jung, in a way, gets the idea of the true self. And we have and I think that's, as we said before, right? We don't give ourselves the time each day to think about, even if it's like each week, to even just think about these basic things. Like the values, what are the values that I live by each day? What are the sides of myself that are like I repress, etc., etc.
Why do you think that is, though? People that don't do that.
I think we've spoken about it before. One of it is just like we always keep ourselves. It's called a busy trap. We keep ourselves busy today because we're busy yesterday. We keep ourselves busy tomorrow because we're busy today. So we're always busy, like all the time. But there's time. Like you don't prioritize it enough as well. Because if you go on your phone, right, there's like 5-6 hours you spend a day on scrolling. No reason. You can spend literally 10 minutes a day just writing and thinking about, these types of parts of yourself. So that's another bigger issue. It's like, okay, why don't you do that? Then it's
seems like it's a lack of priority as well for people. They
lack
just
of
don't
priority, and it's
really
just
think about it.
Yeah, and I think it's just it could come back to the 7 deadly sins. Could be like laziness as well.
Sloth. Too much eating, gluttony.
Yeah, we just distract, and that's a bigger problem to address. Really, it's just like, why is that really the case? Like, why is that really the problem? And that's something that's probably a good starting point. Like, okay, well, why is it that I can't give myself 10 minutes throughout the end of the day or whenever to just think about these things? Oh, it's cringe. Then okay, then you're never gonna really discover or live by your true self. You're gonna be controlled by circumstances, situations, behaviors, by other people. You will never live like your true content fulfillment. You're not going to reach that ever. Because your life then is dictated by other people, which you have actually, as we said, you have no control of. If you think it's cringe. So that's another problem. People just labeling things because of how society views those things.
And how society views is how they want you to view things, right?
Yeah.
Society is based on not everything is true around you. The moment you realize that is when you start to self-reflect. But until then, if you don't ever question that, but you know what? I think there's a lot of there's a lot of influences as well as like people will sell themselves out. Throw a bit of money at them and it's like dangling a carrot in front of a rabbit. Attach it to its tail, just run around. That's how people are. Like there's immoral people, there's people with no values. They'll spout whatever you pay them, tell them to do, they'll do it. So
yeah, I think like going back to that, definitely people that are distracted by other hedonistic things. And I think also like another part is also people that aren't privileged, that don't have the time. They have to think about like how to survive. They're not in that position. And as we said, like algorithms, we outsource a lot of our decisions by just algorithms. ChatGPT has also done that a lot. And yeah, and I think a lot of it is fear, like fear by living by your own values, because it's not gonna really what do you call it? You might get rejected, right? And I think this is a very important part, which is like embracing insecurities and uniqueness, because if you think about like I already described, right, uniqueness, like you being existing in this world is already an impossibility. Like it's impossible, improbable, but it happened. So, and if you think about Steve Jobs, all of these people, Nikola Tesla, they all had the things that people remember the most, other than their own like crazy creations, is also like the weird things that they were obsessed with, or parts of themselves that is unique. Like Steve Jobs would always wear like black turtleneck and some jeans, but he wore that because he wanted to simplify his decision making when it comes to the wardrobe, because he wants his mental capacity to be at bigger problems. But it's just something that's like unique about him. And then even if you think about it back then, right, when you were developing the iPhone, back then there was just like all these keyboards and like flip phones. Imagine just someone saying like, what if we have a screen with no buttons? How stupid would have that sounded back then when you had BlackBerry? They were like absolutely smashing the market. I don't know if you remember BlackBerry.
Yeah, it was like the Nokia E63 type phones, right?
Yeah, but they had crazy big keyboards. And actually, you know what's crazy is they had Instagram like type of like messaging applications and stuff way before. They even had this touchscreen before iPhone.
Right.
But they obviously plummeted because of that's another topic for another time. But then Steve Jobs came with the idea with iPhone, no screen, no buttons. And then that took over. But that would have sounded so stupid back then if you talked with a group of people that had click flip phones, because that was the convention back then. It's just like, and Nikola Tesla, he also contributed to like electricity and engineering on that aspect. But he also had very strange behaviors. Like he was obsessed with like pigeons. He fell in love with a pigeon apparently. So.
Oh, okay. That's a different case.
Yeah, that's a different case. But
in love with a pigeon.
But the thing is, right, like when you read biographies and like personal anecdotes, right, of influential figures, the thing that's the most highlighted is the idiosyncrasies. Like there's something that's unique, the unconventional paths, like their stories about how they failed. And because that's so different from the societal norm, right? And that's what makes it memorable. When you go to weddings, when you go to like funerals and stuff, like as in like when you go to those tragic events, right?
Right.
When someone talks about them, they recall like the most
like eulogies,
right,
yeah. Okay.
Like in that context, eulogy speeches, whatever context, they talk about like the stories that were like the quirks about that person, like that were just weird and funny and strange, because it was the most memorable experience and of that memory of that person. So it's like we almost in a way celebrate the uniqueness, which includes both like, you know, the triumphs, like successes, and also failures of that individual. Not just if they were just a rational person who just did things without any failures, any success, nothing, just lived by whatever, you wouldn't even remember them. It's just like, in a way, the insecurities, the uniqueness, like the failures, successes, all those things, almost in a way are timeless, and they actually will last longer than the house that you saved up for, the car that you've spent your money on, the clothes that you wear. No one's going to remember those things, but people will remember the unique stories about you.
Really well said. So it's embracing, just be weird.
Maybe not like harmful in like an unhealthy way, but basically just
embrace your quirkiness. Embrace
yeah.
your uniqueness. You exist for a reason, and you are 1 in 8 billion that has something different about you.
1 in probably septillion, bro.
Septillion.
This point based on the probabilities of the universe and everything. But yeah, it's like, I think it's just like embracing and appreciating your true self eventually. And I think we already broke it down before. what those parts of us are. And yeah, obviously I want to also mention like in a healthy way, not in an unhealthy way, which is harmful and damaging.
Yeah.
Which is very important. Because it can go extremes, but yeah.
No, well said, Wasif. Thank you. I think we'll wrap up here. Do you have anything further to say?
No, not really, to be honest. I think we've covered it really well.
Are you sure? You final words? Still got time.
I think the most important thing is just to give yourself at least 10 minutes a day, or at least even just 20 minutes a week, just to think about these things. Like, what would I be if money was an object? What would I chase? Like, or what would I desire? If I lost my title today, or if I lost my job today, who would I be? And like, am I not that person because I lost my job? Like the things that you tie yourself with, these extrinsic things like money, the car, house, all those things. What happens when you lose those things? Just putting yourself in that state, really, honestly. And I think that'll really make you unpack a lot of things of yourself that you never knew.
Mm. Or sometimes you got to wait for those black swan events. Literally, yeah.
Yeah, because you can become so caught up in it that it's just like, it takes that type of situation to really break you out of that cycle.
Yeah. So it's either something very tragic to help you break out of that cycle, or you can do it yourself. You prepare now. So
I'd rather DIY, bro.
You'd be surprised. Well, Steve, thank you for your time.